David Cole wasn't supposed to be home until Sunday. But that Friday morning, the deal in New York closed early. And all he could think about was seeing his new wife's smile, the one that made the world slow down. He drove himself for once. No driver, no assistant, no warning. Just him and the quiet hum of the tires rolling through the iron gates of his mansion. The house gleamed in the late afternoon sun, glass walls, marble stairs, the fountain he'd built for his mother, Margaret. Everything looked perfect. Until it wasn't. As the car stopped, David froze. On the front steps, he saw Emma, in her white summer dress, hair shining like gold, holding a silver bucket. His mother stood below her, frail and bent, wearing a worn gray sweater. Before David could even blink, Emma lifted the bucket high and poured. The brown, filthy water splashed down his mother's shoulders, soaking her hair and clothes. The sound echoed, not loud, but sharp enough to slice through him. Margaret gasped and stumbled back, clutching her chest. David's heart pounded so hard it hurt. He didn't move. He couldn't. For a few long seconds, all he could do was stare as the woman he loved sneered. Actually sneered, and muttered, "Maybe next time. Don't touch what isn't yours." Then she turned, calm as ever, and walked back inside. David sat there in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing like he'd been punched. His mother slowly straightened, looking around to make sure no one saw. Then, with trembling hands, she picked up the empty bucket and carried it toward the back door. The billionaire who could silence boardrooms, who could sign papers that moved millions, couldn't even open his car door. He wanted to shout, to run to her, but something stopped him. A voice inside whispered, "Wait." Maybe there was a reason. Maybe he didn't see it right. Maybe. But deep down, David already knew. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't love. And as the sun dipped behind the house, he stepped out of the car, silent and cold, knowing that nothing inside those marble walls would ever feel the same again. When David finally walked into the house, the smell of rosemary and roasted chicken filled the air. Soft jazz played in the background, lights warm and golden, like a picture of peace. And there she was. Emma. She turned toward him with that perfect smile, eyes bright, like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. "David, you're home early," she said, running into his arms, her perfume sweet and familiar. He stood still for a moment before wrapping his arms around her. Her touch felt the same, warm, gentle, safe, but his mind burned with the image of that bucket tipping forward, the dirty water running down his mother's face. "I wanted to surprise you," he said softly, forcing a smile. "Well, you did." She laughed, brushing his cheek. "Dinner's ready. I just finished setting the table." He glanced around. The table was perfectly arranged, candles, fresh flowers, silverware gleaming. Everything looked right. "Too right." "Where's Mom?" David asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Emma blinked just a second too long. "Oh, she said she was tired. Went to her room after helping me clean the porch." She spoke so smoothly. It almost sounded true. Almost. David nodded, pretending to believe her. He walked toward the kitchen, every step heavy. The mop leaned against the wall, wet and dripping. The silver bucket sat near the sink, washed clean. He touched it. Cold metal. No dirt, no smell, no proof. Emma had covered her tracks. She walked up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You've been working so hard, baby. You need to rest. Let me take care of everything here." David smiled faintly but didn't turn around. Her voice, her touch, they used to calm him. Now they made his stomach twist. That night at dinner, Emma laughed, told stories, poured his wine. She looked like the perfect wife in every way. And every time he looked at her, all he could see was his mother's shaking hands and that look of shame. He barely spoke, only nodded, watching her through the flicker of candlelight. By the time he went to bed, he had made a silent promise. He wouldn't shout. He wouldn't accuse. He would find out the truth, every piece of it, no matter what it cost. The next morning the house was quiet, too quiet. David woke early, the sun barely touching the windows. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Emma, and walked down the long hallway toward his mother's room. He found her sitting by the window, folding laundry with shaky hands. Her gray sweater, the same one from yesterday, was washed and drying on a chair. But her skin was still red where the dirty water had hit her. "Mom," he whispered. Margaret looked up, her smile small but soft. "You're home," she said gently, as if nothing had happened. He sat beside her. "Mom, I saw. Yesterday, I saw everything." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she sighed. a sound that carried years of silence. "Please don't be angry with her, David." He blinked. "Angry with her? She humiliated you, Mom." Margaret shook her head. "Maybe I made her upset. I broke one of her vases last week. It was my fault. She told me not to touch it, but I was dusting." Her voice trembled as she spoke. David's chest tightened. He knew his mother, kind to everyone, even those who didn't deserve it. But this wasn't about a vase. This was about power, fear, control. He reached for her hand. "How long has this been going on?" Margaret smiled again, though tears filled her eyes. "She's good to you, David. Don't ruin your marriage because of me." "I'll be fine." Her words hit him harder than a slap. All his life, his mother had protected him, even when she was the one who needed protecting. David stood up, fighting the storm inside him. "No, Mom, you won't be fine." "Not if this keeps happening." He left the room before she could answer, his jaw tight, his heart breaking. That day, he began to notice things, small things that suddenly made sense. Emma snapping at the maid for touching her phone. Emma rolling her eyes when his mother spoke. Emma locking the guest room where Margaret's things used to be stored. The perfect picture of his life was cracking, and behind the glass, something dark and ugly was waiting. By nightfall, David knew one thing for sure. He'd been living with a stranger. That night, David sat alone in his office, the room dim except for the glow of his computer screen. His chest ached with quiet anger. The more he thought about his mother's shaking hands, the more a single word echoed in his head. Proof. Love had blinded him before. Not this time. By morning, he had a plan. He called his security team and told them to upgrade the house cameras, discreetly. "More coverage," he said, "just for safety." What he didn't say was that every hallway, kitchen corner, and back stairwell would now have an extra eye. For a week, David played the part of the perfect husband. He smiled at Emma, kissed her cheek, brought her flowers. He acted like nothing was wrong, like he was still fooled by her gentle voice and soft hands. But each night after she fell asleep, he reviewed the footage. At first there was nothing, just her cooking, reading, or talking on the phone. But then, one clip froze his breath. In the kitchen, Emma stood with her phone pressed to her ear, whispering, "He's so easy to control. Just smile, cry a little, and he signs anything." Then she laughed, a cold, sharp laugh he'd never heard before. Another clip showed her tossing his mother's medicine into the trash, replacing it with old pills. "Keeps her quiet," she muttered. David's hand shook as he paused the video. His throat burned, rage boiling behind his calm eyes. And still he didn't confront her. Not yet. He gathered every piece of evidence, every cruel word, every smirk, every act of disrespect. He made copies, labeled them, and locked them away. The last video was the worst. Emma standing in front of the mirror, talking to herself. "Soon this house will be mine. That old woman's just in the way." David shut the laptop and stared at his reflection in the dark glass. The billionaire everyone feared, the man who built an empire with steel and sweat, sat there, realizing he'd been conquered not by business rivals, but by his own wife. But not for long. He took a deep breath, eyes cold now. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "Tomorrow you show the world who you really are." The next evening, the Cole mansion glittered like a diamond. David was hosting one of his biggest dinners of the year. Investors, friends, reporters, all dressed in black and silver. Laughter filled the air, glasses clinked, and cameras flashed. Emma moved through the crowd like a queen. Her gown shimmered, her smile perfect. "To my husband," she said, raising her glass. "The man who makes dreams come true." David smiled back, calm, unreadable. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said softly. "But tonight I want to show everyone something special." The guests turned toward the giant screen behind him. The music faded. A hush fell over the room. The screen flickered, then played the first clip. Emma's voice filled the hall. "He's so easy to control. Just smile, cry a little, and he signs anything." Gasps echoed. Emma's smile froze. Another clip rolled. Emma dumping dirty water on Margaret's head. The laughter, the cruel words, the disgust. The crowd turned, eyes wide, whispers spreading like wildfire. Emma's face drained of color. "David, turn it off!" she shouted, voice shaking. This is fake." But David didn't move. His voice was calm, steady, and cold. "I trusted you, Emma. I gave you everything. And you gave me lies." Margaret stood quietly near the back of the room, tears in her eyes, but her chin lifted high. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding. Emma stammered, reaching for David's hand. Please, I can explain. He stepped back. There's nothing left to explain. You wanted the house, the money, all of it. But you forgot something, Emma. She blinked through tears. What? He looked around the room, meeting every eye. You can't buy respect. You can't fake kindness. And you'll never understand what real love looks like, because it doesn't come with a price tag. The room was silent. Emma turned, realizing everyone was watching, not with pity but disgust. Her mask had fallen for good. As security quietly led her away, David walked to his mother. She reached out, trembling, and he held her close. I'm sorry, he whispered. Margaret smiled through her tears. You saw the truth, son. That's all I ever wanted. And as the lights dimmed and the guests slipped away, David finally felt free. Not because he was a billionaire, but because for the first time in years, his heart was clean again.